Okay. Now we return to the give and take. Let us have some more questions, please. Madame.
This is a comment, a question. So I brought Oscar Wilde to my book group, and the discussion with the women. One woman couldn't make it to the group, but her report was, I was so offended by the language in the first 2 pages that I couldn't go on. And in my book group, only a few of the women were cool and loved the book. I mean, a lot of them were just, I don't get all this computer game stuff and the language. And I thought, I don't know, I just thought you'd be interested in that. Maybe you've heard that before. I didn't get it.
Nobody likes your shit.
Damn. Well, I mean, how did one respond? I understand. I will repeat it. I suddenly feared for my life. I will repeat it. I was just warming up. My interlocutor mentioned that she brought her book to book group, and one of the women who wasn't able to make it suspiciously to the meeting forwarded her report by email and said that I couldn't get down with this, the language, just too much cursing, too much of this kind of nerd stuff. I don't get any of this crap. And only a few people in her group really kind of hung with the book and felt it. And so she said, this is not much of a question, this is just a comment. And so I felt like, well, I guess my response would be, one of the things that happens is reading is, of course, a great test of our generosity. And often many of us, unfortunately, are trained to read in ways that we're trained to organize the rest of our lives. Most of us only want to be around things that make us feel comfortable. I kind of never grew up in that world. One of the weird things about growing up in a kind of super poor immigrant community is that you got real comfortable with growing up with shit that you didn't actually like. And it becomes more human and more normal. I'm always afraid of my friends who have only, let's say, liberals around them. That's really disturbing to me. I just think that humans are not instrumental, that this is not a buffet, that you only pick people out because they serve a very narrow purpose. And I guess in my mind, as a reader, I always read very generously. Shakespeare never had us in mind when he wrote his plays. He wasn't thinking of you, and he wasn't thinking of me. And yet, we forgive him for that and read the book, read his books, because there's an enormous power in them. Yeah? And I think that one of the things that happens with reading is that it invites us to enter into spaces and worlds and to be reminded that most of what we call existence isn't there to make us feel comfortable. And yet there's great beauty in that, and there's great communion. Now, most people don't hang, and there's nothing you can do. But I guess I've always been a different kind of reader. I've always had this real hope and this real belief that people will tolerate all of your narrative infelicities if they feel that you are bringing them news of the world. And a lot of people don't like to read Melville. They're just like, oh, Melville's too dense. Melville spends too much time talking about the grumpus whale. But I don't know. I think that compassion towards a book is in many ways the first step to approaching it. And I'm not arguing that your readers didn't have compassion, but certainly a book like mine, like almost any book, requires compassion, because a book that is seeking to please you is no book. That's just the truth. A book that immediately tries to make you comfortable and be your friend is no art. The nature of art is to remind you about your fractured, imperfect, flawed, beautiful human self. And most of us don't like encountering that. We use excuses about cursing, we use excuses about sex, we use every kind of excuse possible not to encounter ourselves in art. Because to encounter the human is to be reminded of how sloppy, hurtful, imperfect we are. But we, despite all these flaws, we're very beautiful and we're deserving of many things, but first and foremost, compassion. What else do we got, gang?